Outside St. Mary's Children's Hospital, beneath the cold shadows of glass towers, a barefoot girl offered her last piece of bread to a stranger's child. 3 hours later, that simple act of grace would shatter every law of medicine and ignite a miracle that no science could explain. Marcus Donovan, CEO of Donovan Pharmaceuticals, had built an empire on logic and evidence. But when his 7-year-old son collapsed on the operating table, and doctors witnessed something that defied every medical textbook, he would learn that some forces transcend human understanding. The homeless girl who gave everything she had would become the center of a divine mystery that would bring a powerful man to his knees. What connects a forgotten child to a privileged boy? How can blood transform in ways that violate biological laws? And why would God choose the most unlikely messenger to deliver his greatest miracle? This is a story about faith tested, pride shattered, and divine intervention that leaves even skeptics speechless. Sometimes the greatest miracles come wrapped in the smallest, most broken packages. Sometimes God's plan requires us to lose everything before we can truly see. Drop your city in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. Let's dive into the story. Before we begin, if this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and share where you're watching from in the comments below. Your support means everything. Now, let's begin. The December wind cut through the streets of Boston like frozen knives, but Marcus Donovan barely felt it as he carried his son Ethan through the emergency entrance of St. Mary's Children's Hospital. The boy's skin burned with fever, his small body trembling in his father's Armani-clad arms. "Please, somebody help us." Marcus's voice cracked with desperation as nurses rushed forward with a gurney. "What are his symptoms?" a young doctor asked, already checking Ethan's pulse. "High fever, severe abdominal pain, vomiting. It started 2 hours ago. He has a rare blood disorder, type B negative with Bombay phenotype. It's in his medical file here." Marcus's CEO composure shattered as he watched his only child being wheeled away. "You have to save him. Money is no object, whatever it takes." Dr. Patricia Chen emerged from the examination room 30 minutes later, her expression grave. "Mr. Donovan, Ethan's appendix is severely inflamed. We need to operate immediately, but there's a complication. His blood disorder makes surgery extremely risky. We'll need to have rare blood on standby, and even then." "Even then what?" Marcus gripped her arm, fear flooding his eyes. "Even then, with his condition, there's only a 60% survival rate. I'm sorry. We'll do everything we can." Marcus stumbled into the waiting area, his billion-dollar empire meaningless against the fragility of his child's life. Through the window, he could see the hospital's front entrance where a small figure sat huddled against the cold stone wall. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old, the same age as Ethan. Her clothes were little more than rags, her feet bare despite the December frost. Dark matted hair fell around a face smudged with dirt, but her eyes held something Marcus hadn't seen in years of boardroom battles. Pure, untainted hope. The girl clutched a small paper bag to her chest, rocking slightly as if the motion could warm her small frame. When a well-dressed woman walked past, the child stood, her thin voice barely audible through the glass. "Please, ma'am, I haven't eaten in 2 days. Just $1? The woman recoiled, pulling her designer purse closer as if poverty were contagious. "Get a job. Stop bothering people." The little girl sat back down, but Marcus noticed she never stopped smiling. How could she smile? What did she have to smile about? His phone buzzed. His assistant Richard texted, "Board meeting in 2 hours. They're threatening to vote you out if you miss it. The Shanghai deal is falling apart." Marcus stared at the message, then at the surgical suite doors that had swallowed his son. The biggest deal of his career or his child's life. 3 months ago, the choice would have been automatic. Business first, always business first. Ethan had nannies, tutors, the best care money could buy. But money couldn't sit beside a hospital bed. Money couldn't hold a frightened child's hand. He typed back, "Cancel everything. I don't care about the deal." Through the window, Marcus watched as the homeless girl opened her paper bag with reverent care. Inside was a single piece of bread, probably scavenged from a dumpster. She broke it in half, wrapped one piece carefully in a napkin, and ate the other with small, measured bites, making it last. A mother emerged from the hospital entrance, her own child around 8 years old, crying, "Mommy, I'm so hungry. When can we eat?" "Soon, baby, after Daddy's treatment. We'll find something soon." The woman's voice broke. Her clothes, though clean, were threadbare. Another family crushed by medical debt, Marcus realized with uncomfortable awareness. The homeless girl stood up, clutching her wrapped piece of bread. She approached the crying child with hesitant steps. "Please, miss." Her voice was soft, musical despite her circumstances. "Your little boy is hungry. I have bread. It's clean, I promise. God provided it for me this morning, and now I think He meant for me to share it." The mother's eyes filled with tears. "Sweetheart, no. That's your food. You need it." "But he's crying," the little girl said simply, as if that explained everything. "And I already ate half. God will provide more. He always does. Please?" The mother accepted the bread with shaking hands, pressing it into her son's eager fingers. "What's your name, Angel?" "Grace. My name is Grace." "Well, Grace, you just showed more kindness than I've seen in months. God bless you, child." Marcus watched this exchange through the window, something uncomfortable twisting in his chest. Grace had nothing, literally nothing, yet she gave away half of her only meal to a stranger's child. When was the last time he had given anything that cost him something real? Grace returned to her spot against the wall, shivering more noticeably now. She pulled her thin jacket tighter and closed her eyes, lips moving in silent prayer. 20 minutes later, Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway, her scrubs already stained with blood. "Mr. Donovan, we need to take Ethan to surgery now. His appendix is close to rupturing. Please sign these consent forms." Marcus's hand trembled as he signed, each stroke feeling like he was signing his son's life away. "Dr. Chen, I need to ask you something." "Of course. Do you believe in God? In miracles?" The doctor paused, choosing her words carefully. "I believe in medicine, Mr. Donovan, but I've seen enough unexplainable recoveries in my career to know that sometimes faith is the best medicine we have. Your son needs both right now, the best medical care and every prayer you can offer." After she left, Marcus found himself walking to the hospital entrance. The cold hit him like a physical force, but he barely noticed. Grace looked up as his shadow fell across her. "Hello, mister." Her smile was genuine, gaps where baby teeth had fallen out. "Are you sick? My mama used to say this hospital has angels working inside." "My son is very sick," Marcus heard himself say. "He's having surgery right now." "Oh." Grace's face crumpled with concern. "That's very scary." "I'll pray for him." "What's his name?" "Ethan. He's 7 years old. Same age as you look." "I'm actually 6, Grace corrected. "But I'll be 7 in March if God wills it. I'll pray for Ethan. God listens to prayers, especially for children. My mama told me that before she went to heaven." Something in Marcus broke. "You're out here alone? Where's your family?" "It's just me now, but I'm not alone. God is with me always. Mama made me promise to remember that." Grace's faith was absolute, unshakable, despite circumstances that should have crushed it. Marcus pulled out his wallet, extracting several $100 bills. "Here, please. Buy yourself food, warm clothes, find shelter." Grace looked at the money with wide eyes, then gently pushed his hand away. "That's very kind, mister. But Mama taught me that God provides exactly what we need, exactly when we need it. If I took all that, I might forget to trust Him. But thank you. You have a good heart. I can tell." "How can you say that? You don't know me." Marcus felt tears threatening for the first time in years. "I can see it in your eyes. You're scared for your son. That means you love him very much. Love makes people good, even when they forget for a while." She tilted her head, studying him with wisdom far beyond her years. "Would you like me to pray with you?" Sometimes praying with someone else makes it stronger. Marcus Donovan, who hadn't prayed since he was a child, who had built his empire on logic and ruthless business decisions, who had fired employees without hesitation and crushed competitors without mercy, found himself kneeling on the frozen concrete beside a homeless 6-year-old girl. "Dear God," Grace began, her small hand in his, "please watch over Ethan during his surgery. Send your best angels to guide the doctor's hands. Help him be brave, and help his daddy be brave too. And thank you for bringing us together today. I don't know why yet, but Mama always said you have a plan for everything. In Jesus' name, amen." "Amen," Marcus whispered. He returned to the waiting room, but something had shifted inside him. 3 hours passed like 3 years, each minute an eternity of fear and desperate hope. He found himself praying, really praying, for the first time since childhood. At exactly 6:17 p.m., alarms suddenly screamed through the surgical wing. Marcus leaped to his feet as medical personnel raced past, their faces urgent. Dr. Chen burst through the surgical doors, her mask pulled down, eyes wide with something between shock and terror. "Mr. Donovan, something's happened, something I can't explain. You need to come with me right now." "Is Ethan?" "He's alive, but..." She grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the surgical observation window. "You need to see this. No one will believe it unless they see it with their own eyes." Through the observation glass, Marcus saw his son on the operating table, surrounded by a team of stunned medical professionals. Monitoring equipment beeped steadily, but what captured everyone's attention was the blood analysis displayed on the screen above the table. "That's impossible," a nurse whispered. "I've checked it 3 times. Dr. Chen's voice shook as she explained. "Mr. Donovan, when we began the surgery, Ethan's blood type was B negative with Bombay phenotype, as it's always been. But during the procedure, something happened. His blood—" She paused, struggling with words. "His blood changed." "Changed? Blood types don't change." "Exactly. They don't. They can't. It's biologically impossible. But Ethan's blood has transformed into a different, rare type, one that's actually more stable for his condition. It's as if—" Dr. Chen's clinical composure cracked, as if his body knew exactly what it needed to survive and just changed itself. "In 15 years of surgery, I've never seen anything remotely like this. No one has. This is beyond medicine, Mr. Donovan. This is a miracle," Marcus finished, his eyes drawn to the window where, far below, he could just make out a small figure in ragged clothes, still praying on the hospital steps. The surgical observation room filled with hospital staff, each one wanting to witness the impossible. Dr. Michael Rodriguez, the hospital's chief of hematology, pushed through the crowd, his skeptical expression making his intentions clear. "Someone made a mistake," he announced, grabbing Ethan's chart. "Lab error, contaminated sample, something. Blood types don't change. Period." "I tested it myself 4 times, Dr. Chen said quietly. "Fresh samples each time. Look at the comparison." She pulled up 2 screens side by side, showing blood analyses taken 3 hours apart during the surgery. Rodriguez studied the screens, his face losing color. This is unprecedented. The genetic markers have completely altered. The H antigen expression, the Rh factors, even the—" He stopped, his scientific certainty crumbling. "This doesn't just defy medical understanding. This defies the laws of biology itself." Marcus watched through the window as surgeons completed Ethan's operation with renewed confidence. His son's vital signs had stabilized dramatically after the blood transformation. What should have been a life-threatening surgery had become routine, as if an invisible hand had intervened. "There has to be a rational explanation," Rodriguez insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. "We'll run every test available. DNA sequencing, cellular analysis, everything. Run whatever tests you want," Marcus said softly, his gaze still fixed on his unconscious son. "I know what I witnessed. I prayed for a miracle 3 hours ago, and God answered." Dr. Chen touched his shoulder. "Ethan will be in recovery for several hours. Why don't you get some air? We'll monitor him constantly and call you if anything changes." Marcus found himself drawn back to the hospital entrance. Night had fallen, the temperature dropping further, but Grace remained at her post against the wall, now wrapped in a thin hospital blanket someone had apparently given her. Her eyes were closed, lips still moving in silent prayer. Marcus approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Grace?" She opened her eyes and her face lit up with genuine joy. "Mister, is Ethan okay? I've been praying so hard." "He's going to be fine. Better than fine, actually. Something miraculous happened during his surgery." Marcus sat down beside her on the cold concrete, no longer caring about his expensive suit. "Grace, where do you sleep at night?" "Different places. There's a shelter on Boylston Street, but it's usually full. Sometimes I sleep in the subway station where it's warm. The security guard, Mr. Thomas, he's nice. He pretends he doesn't see me." She said this matter-of-factly, as if homelessness at 6 years old was perfectly normal. "How long have you been on the streets?" "Since summer. Mama got very sick and we didn't have insurance for the hospital. She went to heaven in August." Grace's voice remained steady, but tears gathered in her eyes. "She made me promise to stay strong, to keep praying, to help others when I could. She said God had special plans for me." Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. While he lived in a Beacon Hill mansion worth $12 million, this child slept in subway stations and survived on garbage. While his son received the best medical care money could buy, her mother had died for lack of basic insurance. "Grace, I want to help you. Please let me." "You already did," she said simply. "You prayed with me. That means more than money, mister. Besides, I can see God is working on your heart. Maybe that's why he brought us together." "I'm Marcus Donovan. And I'm going to make sure you have a safe place to sleep tonight and food in your stomach. No arguments. For the first time, Grace's certainty wavered. But Mama said, your mama wanted you safe and cared for. I'm certain of that. And right now, God is using me to provide for you. Will you let me? Grace considered this, then nodded slowly. Okay, but only because I think maybe this is part of God's plan too. Marcus called his driver, then his housekeeper. Mrs. Patterson, please prepare the guest room. We'll have a visitor staying with us tonight, a young girl named Grace. She'll need warm clothes, food, and, his voice caught, kindness. Lots of kindness. While they waited for the car, Marcus asked, Grace, this morning when you gave away your bread, weren't you scared you wouldn't get more food? A little, she admitted. But being scared and having faith aren't opposites, Mr. Marcus. Mama said faith is choosing to trust God even when you're scared. That little boy needed food more than me right then. God always provides exactly what we need exactly when we need it. What if I hadn't come along? What if no one had helped you? Grace's smile was luminous. But you did come along. That's how God works. He sends people to each other right when they need it most. Like how he sent me here today when Ethan needed prayers, and then sent you to me when I needed help. It's all connected, even when we can't see how yet. The wisdom in her words struck Marcus profoundly. This child, who had every reason to be bitter and faithless, possessed a spiritual understanding that shamed him. How many times had he attributed his success solely to his own intelligence and hard work, never acknowledging blessings or divine providence? His phone rang. Dr. Chen's number. Mr. Donovan, Ethan's awake and asking for you. His recovery is progressing remarkably well. Honestly, I've never seen a patient bounce back this quickly from such a serious surgery. I'll be right there. Marcus ended the call and looked at Grace. Would you like to meet Ethan? Grace's eyes widened. Really? I can do that? Of course. He should meet the angel who prayed for him. In the recovery room, Ethan lay propped up on pillows, pale but alert. His eyes found Marcus immediately. Dad? What happened? I remember being scared. And then, it's weird. I felt warm, like someone was hugging me. And I heard singing. A girl singing a hymn. Marcus and Grace exchanged glances. What hymn, son? Amazing Grace, Ethan said. Mom used to sing it to me before she... He stopped. The memory of his mother's death 2 years ago still painful. Was someone singing, Dad? This is Grace, Marcus said, guiding her forward. She was praying for you during your surgery. Grace approached the bed shyly. Hi, Ethan. I'm glad you're okay. God took really good care of you. Were you singing? Ethan asked. In my dream, or whatever it was, a girl was singing Amazing Grace, and I felt safe. Was that you? I was praying, Grace said softly. Sometimes when I pray really hard, I sing hymns in my head. Mama taught me that music makes prayers stronger because heaven invented music first. Ethan smiled, then noticed her torn clothes and bare feet. How come you don't have shoes? It's freezing outside. Grace shrugged. I lost them a few weeks ago, but my feet are tough, and Mr. Marcus is going to help me get new ones. Dad, is Grace poor? Ethan asked with the blunt honesty of children. Grace is our friend, Marcus corrected gently. And yes, she's been having some hard times, but we're going to help her. Good. Ethan held out his hand, and Grace took it carefully. Thank you for praying for me. I think it worked. I think God sent you to help me. I think he sent you to help me too, Grace replied. God does that sometimes. He helps everyone at the same time. Dr. Chen entered with a tablet displaying test results. Mr. Donovan, could I speak with you privately? In the hallway, her expression was troubled. We've completed extensive analysis of Ethan's blood transformation. The results are troubling from a scientific perspective, though wonderful for Ethan's prognosis. Meaning his blood type didn't just change. It evolved into precisely the variant needed to optimize his survival. The new type is extraordinarily rare, occurring in less than 1 in a million people. The statistical probability of this spontaneous transformation is, well, it's incalculable, impossible, really. But it happened. Yes, it happened. And here's what keeps me awake already. Ethan's new blood type, this 1 in a million variant. I decided to check our database for potential future donors just as a precaution. Mr. Donovan, there's one match in our entire hospital system. Marcus felt the world tilt. Who? Dr. Chen pulled up a file from 6 months ago. A young girl was treated in our emergency room for malnutrition and exposure. She gave her name as Grace, no last name, no family. She left before social services could intervene, but we took blood samples for our records. Mr. Donovan, that homeless girl praying for your son, she has the exact same impossible blood type Ethan's body just spontaneously developed. The hallway seemed to spin. That can't be coincidence. No, Dr. Chen agreed quietly. It can't be. There's more. I had the lab compare their DNA markers. Just curiosity, really. Mr. Donovan, Grace and Ethan share genetic similarities that shouldn't exist between unrelated individuals. Nothing like siblings or cousins. But there are markers that suggest... She paused, clearly struggling with the implications. It suggests some kind of biological resonance we have no framework to understand. What are you saying? I'm saying that either we're witnessing the most astronomically improbable series of coincidences in medical history, or something beyond our understanding connected these two children on a cellular level. Maybe from the moment Grace began praying for Ethan, or maybe, Dr. Chen's scientific rationalism cracked, maybe from before either of them was even born. Marcus leaned against the wall, his legs suddenly weak. Divine intervention. I'm a doctor. I deal in evidence and empirical data. But Mr. Donovan, I cannot find a rational explanation for what occurred tonight. Your son's body transformed itself in a biologically impossible way to match the blood type of a child who happened to be outside this hospital, who happened to pray for him with extraordinary faith, who happens to be the only compatible donor we've ever registered. If this is coincidence, it's the hand of God disguised as probability. Run more tests, Marcus heard himself say. I need to understand this. I already have authorization for full genetic analysis, immunological studies, everything. But Mr. Donovan, let me be clear. Regardless of what the tests show, your son is going to survive. That's the miracle that matters. The rest is just us trying to understand the mind of God through the lens of science. Marcus returned to the recovery room to find Grace and Ethan engaged in animated conversation about her life on the streets. Ethan was horrified and fascinated in equal measure. You actually sleep in the subway? Ethan asked. Isn't it scary? Sometimes, Grace admitted. But fear and faith can live together, remember? And Mr. Thomas, the security guard, he watches out for me. Says I remind him of his granddaughter. Sometimes he brings me hot chocolate from the machine. That's still really sad, Ethan said with 7-year-old frankness. Nobody should have to sleep in the subway. Well, tonight I'm sleeping at your house, Grace announced happily. Mr. Marcus invited me. Really, Dad? Ethan's face lit up. Can she stay in the room next to mine? The one Mom used to paint in? Marcus nodded, his throat tight. Yes, Grace can stay there as long as she needs. As if reading the emotion in his face, Grace spoke quietly. Mr. Marcus, you don't have to feel guilty. What happened to me and Mama wasn't your fault, and all those hard times were preparing me for something important. I don't know what yet, but Mama always said God doesn't waste suffering. He transforms it into something beautiful. You sound very sure of that. I am sure, because today I helped save Ethan's life by praying, and now you're helping save mine by giving me a safe place to sleep. See? God takes broken things and makes them into blessings. That's what he does best. Marcus looked at this extraordinary child, homeless, orphaned, barely surviving, yet radiating faith that would shame most adults. Then he looked at his son, recovering miraculously from what should have been a fatal crisis. 2 children, brought together by impossible circumstances, one rich, one destitute, one surrounded by privilege, one abandoned by every system meant to protect her, yet connected now by something science couldn't explain, and Marcus was only beginning to understand. Grace, he said slowly, would you be willing to let the doctors run some tests? Nothing that would hurt, just blood work and scans. They're trying to understand what happened to Ethan. Will it help other kids? Grace asked immediately. It might. Then yes. Mama always said if you can help, you should help. She yawned suddenly, exhaustion finally catching up with her. I'm pretty tired though. Is it okay if we do the test tomorrow? Of course. Let's get you home. Marcus caught himself. Let's get you to my house. Mrs. Patterson will have dinner waiting and a warm bed. As they prepared to leave, Dr. Chen pulled Marcus aside once more. The test's tomorrow. I want you to prepare yourself. Whatever we discover, it's going to challenge everything you think you know about reality, medicine, and possibly even faith. Are you ready for that? Marcus looked at Grace, who had fallen asleep against Ethan's hospital bed, her hand still holding his son's. Both children wore expressions of perfect peace. Ready or not, he said quietly. I think God's already shown me that some miracles demand we simply accept rather than understand them. But even as he spoke those words, Marcus had no idea just how profound and shattering the next revelation would be. Marcus's Beacon Hill mansion felt different with Grace inside it. The $12 million property, with its high ceilings and marble floors, suddenly seemed obscenely large. How many homeless families could live comfortably in rooms he barely used? Mrs. Patterson, his housekeeper of 15 years, greeted them with characteristic efficiency that melted when she saw Grace's condition. "Oh, you poor lamb," she breathed, immediately wrapping the child in her arms. "Let's get you cleaned up and fed, shall we?" Grace looked overwhelmed by the mansion's opulence. She touched the silk wallpaper tentatively, as if afraid her hands might soil it. "Mr. Marcus, are you sure it's okay for me to be here? I'm very dirty." "Dirt washes off," Mrs. Patterson said firmly. "And this house has been too quiet for too long. Come along, dear. I've drawn you a warm bath and I've made chicken soup." "Real chicken soup?" Grace's eyes widened. "With noodles and everything?" "With noodles and everything, plus fresh bread and apple pie for after." Grace looked at Marcus for permission. He nodded, his chest tight with emotion he couldn't name. How could such simple things, a bath, soup, safety, mean so much to one child while his son took them completely for granted? While Mrs. Patterson attended to Grace, Marcus sat in his study staring at his phone. The board meeting he'd missed had consequences. Richard had left 3 voicemails, each progressively more panicked. The Shanghai deal had collapsed. Stock prices were dropping. Shareholders were furious. 3 months ago, this would have consumed him with anxiety. Tonight, it felt meaningless. He opened his laptop and began searching for information on rare blood types, on impossible medical miracles, on the statistical probability of divine intervention. The internet offered thousands of stories of unexplained healings, most easily dismissed as misdiagnosis or exaggeration. But what happened to Ethan had been witnessed by a dozen medical professionals with extensive documentation. A soft knock interrupted his research. Grace stood in the doorway wearing pajamas Mrs. Patterson must have purchased, her hair clean and braided. She looked transformed, like a different child, but her eyes held the same profound wisdom. "Mr. Marcus, I wanted to say thank you before I go to sleep, for everything." "You're very welcome, Grace. Do you have everything you need?" "More than I need. Way more." She hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why are you so sad?" "Ethan is going to be okay. You have this beautiful house. You helped me tonight." "Those are all good things. But you still look like something's hurting you inside." Marcus was taken aback by her perceptiveness. "How did you—" "Mama taught me to really see people, not just look at them. She said people who have everything on the outside sometimes have nothing on the inside, and that makes them the saddest of all." Grace came further into the study. "You're not really happy, are you?" "I thought I was," Marcus admitted, surprised by his own honesty. "I built a huge company. I made a lot of money. I thought success would make me feel fulfilled. But you're right. I'm not happy. I haven't been happy since my wife died." "How did she die?" "Cancer. 2 years ago. She wanted to slow down, spend more time with Ethan, maybe do charity work, but I was always busy with the company. Always one more deal, one more acquisition. I kept telling her we'd have time later." His voice cracked. There was no later. Grace climbed into the chair beside him, her small hand finding his. "Mama used to say that God gives us time like he gives us bread, exactly enough for today. We can't save it up for later. We have to use it now. Your mother sounds like she was very wise. She was the best. She used to be a teacher before she got sick. She taught me to read using the Bible because it was the only book we had. She said every story in there was really about the same thing." "What thing?" "Love. Love that gives up everything. Love that forgives. Love that transforms. Love that saves. She said that's what God is. The kind of love that changes everything it touches." Marcus felt tears sliding down his face. When had he last cried? When had he last let himself feel anything beyond the drive for more success, more profit, more control? "Grace, do you really believe God has a plan for all this? For you losing your mother? For you being homeless? For what happened to Ethan tonight?" "Yes," she said simply. "I don't understand it all yet. Sometimes God's plans hurt before they help, but Mama made me promise to trust that he's weaving everything together into something beautiful, even when it looks like it's all just falling apart. I want to believe that, but it's hard." "Of course it's hard. Faith isn't for easy things, Mr. Marcus. Faith is for impossible things." Grace yawned, exhaustion finally claiming her. Can I tell you what I think? Please. I think God brought me to that hospital today for 2 reasons. One was to pray for Ethan, but the other was so you could find me. Not because you needed to help me, but because I needed to help you remember what really matters. Money and companies and deals, those aren't bad things. But they're like the wrapper on a present. They're not the actual gift. What's the actual gift? Love, connection, helping each other, being part of God's big story instead of just writing our own small one. Grace slid off the chair. I should sleep now, but thank you, Mr. Marcus. Tonight is the first time since Mama died that I feel like maybe God's plan is starting to make sense. After she left, Marcus sat in silence for a long time. Then he pulled out his phone and composed an email to his board of directors. Effective immediately, I'm implementing new policies. 20% of company profits will fund a foundation providing health care for families who can't afford insurance. I'm establishing a children's shelter in Boston with full medical services. I'm cutting my salary by half and donating it to homeless services. If the board objects, they can vote me out. Some things matter more than quarterly earnings. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. The next morning, Marcus brought Ethan home from the hospital with strict instructions for rest and recovery. Grace was waiting in the foyer, practically bouncing with excitement. Ethan, you're home! Mrs. Patterson made pancakes, and she let me help. The boys hugged awkwardly, Ethan mindful of his surgical incision. Grace, wait until you see my room. I have every video game console ever made. What's a video game console? Grace asked innocently, and Ethan's jaw dropped. You've never played video games? Oh man, you're going to love Mario Kart. Marcus watched them race upstairs, something warm blooming in his chest. Was this what his house had been missing? Not just the sound of children, but the sound of genuine joy. His phone rang. Dr. Chen. Mr. Donovan, the genetic test results are back. Can you come to the hospital this afternoon? Alone, preferably. There's something you need to see before we discuss it with anyone else. That's serious? That impossible, she corrected. At 3 p.m., Marcus sat in Dr. Chen's office while she pulled up screens filled with data he couldn't interpret. Her hands shook slightly as she navigated the files. I've been a doctor for 15 years, she began. I've witnessed births, deaths, miraculous recoveries, and tragic losses. But I have never, in all my career, seen anything that comes close to what these results show. Just tell me, doctor. She took a deep breath. Grace and Ethan share genetic markers that indicate a biological connection. Not siblings, not cousins, but something the scientific community has no framework to categorize. It's as if, and I know how this sounds, as if their DNA is communicating with each other across cellular boundaries. What does that mean? Honestly, I don't know. Neither do the specialists I consulted. What we do know is that when Grace prayed for Ethan, when she was in close physical proximity to the hospital, his body underwent a transformation that specifically matched her rare blood type. The probability of this happening randomly is beyond astronomical. It's functionally impossible. Marcus leaned forward. Are you suggesting her prayers physically affected his biology? I'm suggesting that whatever connected these 2 children operates beyond physical laws as we understand them. Prayer, faith, divine intervention. Call it what you want. But something created a biological bridge between them that saved Ethan's life. There's more, isn't there? I can see it in your face. Dr. Chen hesitated, then pulled up another screen. We found something else in Grace's blood work. She has markers indicating she's been malnourished for months, that she's fought off several infections without treatment, that by all rights she should be severely ill. But Mr. Donovan, her immune system shows activity unlike anything I've seen. It's as if her body is being protected by something we can't measure. Protected by what? I'm a scientist. I deal in empirical evidence. But if you're asking my personal opinion, she met his eyes directly. That child is being kept alive by something beyond medicine. And now that something has extended to protect your son, too. Marcus drove home in a daze, Dr. Chen's words echoing in his mind. When he arrived, he found Grace and Ethan in the library, Grace reading Bible stories aloud while Ethan listened with rapt attention. And then David defeated Goliath with just 1 stone, Grace was saying. Because when God is with you, it doesn't matter how small you are or how big the giant is. Faith makes the impossible possible. Is that what happened with me? Ethan asked. Was my appendix the giant and Grace's prayers were the stone? Maybe, Grace said thoughtfully. Or maybe we're all just tiny pieces of a really big story God is telling, And sometimes pieces that seem separate are actually connected in ways we can't see yet. Marcus cleared his throat and both children looked up. Grace, could I talk to you for a minute? Alone? In his study, with the door closed, Marcus struggled with how to explain what Dr. Chen had discovered. Finally, he decided on simple honesty. Grace, the doctors did tests on your blood and Ethan's. They found something strange, a connection between you two that science can't explain. Grace nodded calmly, as if this didn't surprise her at all. I felt it. During the surgery when I was praying, I felt like I was connected to Ethan somehow, like our hearts were praying together even though we'd never met. The doctors think your prayers physically changed Ethan's blood to match yours. They think you two are connected in a way that defies medical understanding. God works in mysterious ways, Grace quoted softly. That's from the Bible. It means he does things we can't understand because we can't see the whole picture like he can. Aren't you scared? Doesn't this frighten you? Why would it frighten me? Mr. Marcus, God used me to help save Ethan's life. That's not scary. That's amazing. That's what Mama meant when she said I was supposed to trust him even when I didn't understand. Grace's face glowed with certainty. This is why I was at the hospital that day. This is why you found me. This is why everything happened exactly the way it did. But what does it mean for the future? The doctors want to study this connection, understand it better. Then let them study it. Maybe understanding will help other people. Isn't that good? Marcus marveled at her fearlessness. At 6 years old, homeless and orphaned, she possessed a faith that made his own tentative belief look pitiful by comparison. Grace, I want you to know, you don't have to go back to the streets. Ever. You can stay here as long as you want. I'm going to find out if there are any relatives who should be taking care of you, but if not, I want to make sure you're safe and cared for. Grace's eyes filled with tears for the first time since he'd met her. You mean it? I can really stay? I mean it. This house needs you. Ethan needs you. And I think, Marcus's voice broke, I think I need you too. You've reminded me of what really matters, Grace. You've reminded me how to have faith. She threw her arms around him, and Marcus hugged her back. This tiny miracle of a child who had crash-landed into his carefully controlled life and shattered it in all the right ways. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for seeing me when everyone else looked away. Mama said God would send someone when I needed help most. I just didn't know it would be you. That night, Marcus stood in the doorway of the room Grace now occupied, his late wife's painting studio, filled with light even at night. Grace was already asleep, peaceful and safe for the first time in months. Ethan appeared beside him in pajamas. Dad, is Grace really going to stay forever? If she wants to, yes. Good. She makes the house feel less empty. Ethan paused. Do you think Mom sent her to us? From heaven? Marcus considered this. I think God works through all sorts of people, living and dead, to take care of each other. Maybe Mom is part of that story too. Grace says miracles happen when we pay attention. I think she's right. I think the miracle wasn't just my surgery. I think the miracle was you finding Grace, and Grace finding us, and all of us finding each other exactly when we needed to. Marcus pulled his son close, grateful beyond words for this second chance, to be a better father, to be a better man, to finally understand that success measured in dollars and deals meant nothing compared to connection measured in love and faith. In Grace's room, neither of them noticed her eyes open briefly, a smile crossing her face as she heard their conversation. Then she closed her eyes again and whispered into the darkness, Thank you, God. Thank you for making sense of it all. Thank you for turning my suffering into someone else's blessing. And thank you for showing me that Mama was right. You really do have a plan for everything, even the broken, scary parts. Especially those parts. The house settled into silence, but it was a different silence than before. Not empty, but full. Full of possibility, full of hope, full of the promise that this was only the beginning of a much larger story God was weaving, one that would test them all in ways they couldn't yet imagine. 3 weeks passed in a blur of joy Marcus had forgotten existed. Grace integrated into their lives with surprising ease, though her past haunted her in small ways. She hoarded food in her nightstand until Mrs. Patterson gently explained there would always be breakfast. She woke at dawn, unable to believe she could sleep past sunrise. She apologized constantly for taking up space. But slowly, security softened her edges. She laughed more. She played with Ethan without the shadow of survival hovering over her. She began to trust that this wasn't temporary. Marcus had hired the best family attorney in Boston to investigate Grace's situation. The report arrived on a gray January morning, and its contents made his blood run cold. Mr. Donovan, attorney Rebecca Walsh, sat across from him in his study, her expression grim. Grace's story is more complicated than we anticipated. Her mother, Sarah Morrison, died of untreated leukemia in August. There is a living relative, Grace's father, Thomas Morrison. Marcus felt the world tilt. Her father, where is he? Currently incarcerated in Massachusetts Correctional Institution for drug trafficking. He's been in prison for 4 years, since Grace was 2. Sarah cut all contact with him after his arrest. Rebecca paused. Mr. Donovan, Thomas Morrison is up for parole next month. If granted, he has legal rights to Grace as her biological father. Absolutely not. Marcus stood abruptly. You didn't see her when I found her. Barefoot, starving, sleeping in subway stations. Where was he? What kind of father? The courts don't care about our feelings. He's her legal guardian. Unless we can prove he's unfit, which will be difficult given he's been incarcerated and hasn't had the opportunity to demonstrate parenting, then we fight it. I want full custody of Grace. I'll adopt her if necessary. Rebecca's expression softened. Marcus, I understand your attachment, but you've known her 3 weeks. The court will question your motives, especially given your wealth. They'll wonder if this is about control or genuine care. It's about protecting a child who's already suffered too much. Then we need to build an airtight case. I'll need character witnesses, evidence of Grace's well-being in your care, psychological evaluations proving she's thriving, and we need to prepare Grace for the possibility that she might have to see her father again. That evening, Marcus sat Grace down in the library. She sensed immediately something was wrong. Mr. Marcus, you look worried. Is Ethan okay? Ethan's fine. Grace, I need to talk to you about something difficult. It's about your father. Grace's face went completely blank. A defense mechanism Marcus now recognized. What about him? He's alive. He's been in prison, but he might be released soon. If that happens, he has legal rights to you as your father. No. The word was flat, emotionless. I'm not going back to him. Grace, I won't let that happen if I can prevent it. But I need you to tell me the truth. What happened before your mother died? Why did she keep you hidden? Grace was silent for a long moment. Her small hands clenched in her lap. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. He used to hurt us. Before he went to prison. He'd come home angry, and he'd hit Mama. Sometimes he'd hit me too if I got in the way. Mama said he was sick, that drugs changed him into someone else. After he got arrested, she said we were finally safe. She made me promise never to tell anyone our real names if he got out. Rage burned through Marcus's chest. How old were you when this happened? 2, maybe 3. I don't remember everything, just feelings. Being scared, Mama crying, hiding in closets. Grace looked up, tears streaming down her face. I can't go back to him, Mr. Marcus. I know you're not my real daddy, but you're good to me. He never was. Even before the drugs, Mama said he was mean. Marcus pulled her into his arms. You're not going anywhere. I promise you, Grace. I will do everything in my power to keep you safe. But what if the law says I have to go? Then we'll fight the law, and we'll win. He pulled back, looking into her frightened eyes. Do you remember what you told me that first night? About faith being for impossible things? Yes, this is one of those impossible things. We have to have faith that God didn't bring us together just to tear us apart. Can you do that? Grace nodded slowly, but Marcus saw doubt in her eyes for the first time. This child who had maintained unwavering faith through homelessness and loss was finally confronting a fear that shook her certainty. The next month was a legal battlefield. Rebecca filed for emergency custody, citing Grace's history of abuse and her father's criminal record. Thomas Morrison's public defender argued he'd served his time, completed rehabilitation programs, and deserved a chance to reunite with his daughter. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for February 15th. Marcus prepared obsessively, gathering evidence, coordinating with child psychologists, documenting every moment of Grace's transformation in his care. But 3 days before the hearing, everything changed. Dr. Chen called at 11 p.m., her voice urgent. Mr. Donovan, you need to come to the hospital immediately. Bring Grace. There's been a development with the genetic testing. What kind of development? One you need to see in person. And Mr. Donovan, bring your attorney. You're going to need her. At midnight, Marcus, Grace, Rebecca, and Ethan sat in Dr. Chen's office while she pulled up screens filled with data. A second doctor stood beside her. Dr. James Reeves, head of the hospital's genetics department. Mr. Donovan, Dr. Reeves began, his voice shaking slightly. We've been conducting advanced genetic analysis on both children, trying to understand the biological connection we discovered. What we found is, there's no precedent for this in medical literature. Just tell us, Marcus said, gripping Grace's hand. Dr. Reeves pulled up a comparison screen. This shows genetic markers we call HLA types, human leukocyte antigens. They're inherited from parents and are unique to each individual, like fingerprints. They're crucial for immune system function and organ compatibility. I don't understand, Rebecca said. What does this have to do with? Grace and Ethan share identical HLA markers across multiple chromosomes. Not similar. Identical. The probability of this occurring in unrelated individuals is less than 1 in 10 million. Marcus felt his heart hammering. What are you saying? Dr. Chen leaned forward. We're saying that genetically, Grace and Ethan are as compatible as identical twins. But they're not twins. They're not siblings. They share no common parents. By every biological law we understand, this level of genetic matching is impossible unless what? Grace asked quietly. Unless something beyond biology created this connection. Mr. Donovan, when Grace prayed for Ethan, when his blood transformed to match hers, we thought it was a one-time miracle. But these genetic results suggest the connection goes much deeper. It's as if their DNA was designed to fit together, to complement each other, to save each other, Grace finished. She looked at Ethan, wonder in her eyes. God made us for each other. Even before we met, he knew we'd need each other. There's more, Dr. Reeves said. He pulled up another screen. We ran a paternity analysis as part of our comprehensive testing. Grace, we compared your DNA to Thomas Morrison's based on records from his incarceration. The results are conclusive. Grace gripped Marcus's hand tighter. He's my father. I know. No, Dr. Reeves said gently. He's not. Thomas Morrison is not your biological father. There's zero genetic relationship between you. The room went completely silent. Grace stared at the doctor, her face uncomprehending. But Mama said he was my daddy. She said that's why we had to hide. Your mother may have believed it, or she may have had reasons to lie. But genetically, it's impossible. Thomas Morrison cannot be your biological father. Rebecca leaned forward, lawyer instincts engaged. Do you have any idea who is? We ran Grace's DNA through every available database. No matches. Her biological father is unknown. Dr. Reeves looked at Marcus. But this changes everything for your custody case. Thomas Morrison has no legal rights to Grace. She's not his daughter. Marcus felt hope and confusion warring in his chest. Then who is her father? How did Sarah Morrison end up with Grace if Thomas isn't? We may never know, Doctor, Chen said softly. But what we do know is this. Grace is legally free for adoption. There's no biological father with parental rights. The state could place her in foster care or I could adopt her, Marcus said immediately. He looked down at Grace, whose face showed shock, hope, and lingering fear. Grace, I know this is a lot to process, but if you'd let me, I'd be honored to be your father, legally, officially, forever. Grace's tears came in a flood. You mean it? Really mean it? Really mean it. You saved my son's life. You brought faith back into this house. You've shown me what truly matters. Grace, I think God brought us together for more reasons than we understood. Maybe this is one of them. But I'm nobody, Grace whispered. I'm just a homeless girl with no real family. Why would you want me? Ethan, who had been silent throughout, suddenly spoke. Because you're my sister. Maybe not by blood the normal way, but by blood the God way. The doctor said we match, right? That means we're supposed to be family. Grace looked at Ethan, then at Marcus, then at the genetic evidence on the screens. Slowly, her expression shifted from fear to wonder. Mama used to say God writes straight with crooked lines. I never understood what she meant. Grace's voice grew stronger. But now I think I do. All the bad things, losing Mama, being homeless, being scared, they were the crooked lines. And God was using them to write me straight into this family. Into exactly where I was supposed to be all along. Rebecca pulled out her phone. I'm calling Judge Harrison right now. This changes everything. With no biological father claiming rights, and with this documented medical connection between the children, we can fast-track adoption proceedings. As Rebecca stepped into the hallway to make calls, Dr. Chen pulled up one final screen. There's one more thing you should see. We analyzed the timeline of Grace's conception based on her birth date and genetic markers. Mr. Donovan, Grace was conceived during the exact same week that your wife was pregnant with Ethan. Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. What does that mean? It means these two children, born to different mothers in different circumstances, were being formed at the exact same time. Their earliest cells were dividing, their DNA was being written during the same 7 days, and somehow, impossibly, their genetic code was written to match each other's in ways that defy natural probability. Like God was planning this from the very beginning, Grace said softly. Before either of us was born, he knew Ethan would need me, and I would need him. He knew Mr. Marcus would need both of us, so he made sure we'd find each other exactly when the time was right. Marcus looked at this child, this miracle, and felt something shift permanently in his understanding of the universe. He'd built his life on logic, on measurable results, on control. But Grace's existence, her connection to Ethan, the impossible series of events that brought them together, none of it followed rules he understood. Yet here she was, real, alive, genetically matched to his son in ways science couldn't explain. A living testament to forces beyond human comprehension. Dr. Chen, Marcus said slowly, if we hadn't run these tests, if Thomas Morrison had been her biological father, Grace would be going back to an abusive home right now. Yes, Dr. Chen agreed. This revelation came at precisely the moment needed to save her. Some might call that lucky timing. And what would you call it? Dr. Chen smiled slightly. I'm a scientist, Mr. Donovan, but I'm also a person who's witnessed the impossible tonight. I'd call it divine intervention. I'd call it proof that sometimes God performs miracles through genetic code instead of burning bushes. And I'd call you all blessed beyond measure. Rebecca returned, her face flushed with excitement. Judge Harrison is reviewing the evidence tonight. Given the circumstances, the genetic evidence, the lack of biological father, Grace is thriving in your care. She's willing to grant emergency custody immediately with adoption proceedings to follow. Marcus, you could take Grace home tonight as her legal guardian. Grace looked up at Marcus, hope and fear and love all mixed in her expression. Does this mean I'm really yours? That nobody can take me away? Marcus knelt down, taking both her small hands in his. This means you're really mine, that we're really a family. You, me, and Ethan, forever. And Mama in heaven? And your Mama in heaven, watching over all of us. Grace threw her arms around his neck, sobbing with relief and joy. Thank you, God. Thank you for the crooked lines. Thank you for writing me into this family. Thank you for making me belong somewhere. Ethan joined the embrace, and for a moment, the three of them held each other in the sterile hospital office, while doctors and lawyers witnessed a family being born, not through biology, but through something far more powerful. Later, as they prepared to leave the hospital, Grace paused at the window overlooking the entrance, the same spot where Marcus had first seen her, homeless and hungry, offering her only bread to a stranger's child. Mr. Marcus? She paused, then corrected herself with a shy smile. Daddy? Do you think this is what Mama meant? About God having a plan? What do you think? I think God knew I'd lose her, and he knew that would hurt so much. But he also knew you and Ethan needed me, and I needed you. So he let the sad thing happen so the beautiful thing could happen after. It doesn't make losing Mama hurt less, but it makes it mean something. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. Your Mama raised you right, Grace. She taught you faith that could move mountains, or change blood types, or create families out of impossibilities. Grace pressed her hand against the cold window, leaving a small handprint. Goodbye, old life, she whispered. Thank you for teaching me to trust God even when it was hard. But hello, new life. Hello, family. Hello, home. As they walked to the car, Grace between Marcus and Ethan, holding both their hands, none of them noticed the figure watching from across the street. Thomas Morrison stood in the shadows, released on parole 3 days early due to prison overcrowding. He'd come to claim his daughter, and he wasn't going to let some rich man steal what belonged to him. The first threat came via email at 2 a.m. Marcus woke to his phone buzzing and read the message with growing dread. I know what you did. That's my daughter. You can't buy her with your money. I'm coming for Grace, and no fancy lawyer is going to stop me. She's mine by blood and by law. See you soon. TM. Marcus immediately forwarded it to Rebecca and increased security at the house. But the damage was done. Thomas Morrison knew where they lived, and he was making his intentions clear. Grace sensed the tension at breakfast. Daddy, why do you look worried? Did something bad happen? Marcus hesitated, unwilling to frighten her, but knowing honesty was crucial. Grace, Thomas Morrison contacted me. He doesn't know yet that he's not your biological father. He thinks he still has rights to you. Grace's fork clattered to her plate. He's out? He's coming here? He's out, but he's not coming anywhere near you, I promise. Marcus reached across the table, taking her hand. The law is on our side now. He has no legal claim. But I need you to be brave a little longer while we make absolutely sure you're safe. I am brave, Grace said, but her voice trembled. Mama taught me to be brave. But Daddy, I'm scared too. What if he takes me before the judge says I'm really yours? That won't happen. Rebecca is filing an emergency protective order today, and I've hired private security. Nobody gets near you without going through them first. Ethan, who had been silent, spoke up. Grace, remember what you told me about David and Goliath? About how faith makes the impossible possible? We just have to have faith now. Grace managed a small smile. You're right. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be scared when God's already shown us so many miracles. But Marcus saw the fear in her eyes, and he shared it. The protective order was granted that afternoon, forbidding Thomas Morrison from contacting Grace or coming within 500 feet of her. But legal orders didn't stop desperate men, and Morrison's prison record showed a history of violence and disregard for authority. 3 days passed in tense anticipation. Marcus worked from home, unwilling to leave Grace and Ethan. Mrs. Patterson moved into the guest house to provide 24-hour supervision. 2 security guards patrolled the property. On the 4th day, Morrison made his move. It was Friday afternoon. Marcus was in a virtual meeting with his board, discussing the new charitable foundation. Grace and Ethan were in the library with Mrs. Patterson, working on homeschool lessons. The security guards were doing perimeter checks. Nobody saw Thomas Morrison scale the back wall using equipment stolen from a construction site. Nobody saw him hide in the garden shed waiting for his moment. His moment came when Mrs. Patterson went to the kitchen to prepare snacks. The children were alone for less than 3 minutes. Morrison burst through the library door, his face twisted with rage and desperation. He looked like he'd been living rough since his release. Clothes dirty, face unshaven, eyes wild. "Grace!" he shouted. "There you are! What lies have these people been filling your head with?" Grace screamed, stumbling backward. Ethan immediately moved in front of her, his small body shielding hers despite his fear. "Get away from her!" Ethan yelled with all the authority a 7-year-old could muster. "You're not allowed to be here." "Who's going to stop me? You?" Morrison laughed bitterly. "That's my daughter, Sarah's girl. I've got rights." "No, you don't." Grace's voice rang out, stronger than Marcus had ever heard it. "The doctors proved it. You're not my real daddy. You never were." Morrison's face went from rage to confusion to something darker. "What are you talking about?" "I'm not yours," Grace repeated, tears streaming down her face. "The DNA tests proved it. You have no claim on me, and even if you did, I'd never go with you. You hurt me. You hurt Mama. You're mean and cruel, and I won't let you hurt anyone ever again." "You little—" Morrison lunged forward, but Ethan held his ground. "Daddy!" Both children screamed in unison. "Help!" Marcus was through the library door in seconds, security guards close behind. He placed himself between Morrison and the children, rage making his voice deadly calm. "You have 3 seconds to leave my house before I have you arrested for violating a protective order, breaking and entering, and attempted kidnapping." "That's my daughter," Morrison snarled, but uncertainty crept into his voice as the security guards moved to flank him. "No," Marcus said coldly. "She's not. We have genetic proof you're not her biological father. You have 0 legal rights to Grace. You have 0 moral rights after the abuse you inflicted. And if you ever come near these children again, I will use every resource at my disposal to ensure you spend the rest of your life in prison. Am I clear?" Morrison looked at Grace, who stared back with a combination of fear and defiance. "Your mama lied to me. All those years I thought, my mama protected me from you," Grace said, her voice steady now despite her tears. "She gave her life making sure I'd be safe from you. And now God gave me a new daddy who actually loves me. You need to leave. You need to leave and never come back." The fight drained from Morrison's face, replaced by something that might have been grief or might have been self-pity. "I did my time. I got clean. I thought I'd get a chance to make things right." "You don't deserve that chance," Marcus said. "Not after what you did to a woman and child who depended on you. Security, escort Mr. Morrison off the property and call the police. I want him charged with every applicable crime." As security led Morrison away, he looked back once. "I loved Sarah. In my own way, I loved her." "Love doesn't hurt people," Grace said softly. "Real love protects. Real love sacrifices. Real love stays even when things are hard. You don't know anything about love. After Morrison was gone and police had taken statements, Marcus held both children close, his heart still hammering with residual fear and fury. "I'm so sorry," he kept repeating. "I should have had better security. I should have anticipated." "Daddy, stop." Grace pulled back, looking at him seriously. "You saved us, you protected us. That man wanted to take me, but he couldn't because you were here and because you care. That's what real fathers do." "Grace is right," Ethan added, "and we were brave, like you taught us." We stood up to him even though we were scared. Mrs. Patterson appeared with hot chocolate and cookies, her hands shaking. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Donovan. I never should have left them alone. Not even for—" "Nobody's blaming you," Marcus interrupted gently. "Morrison is the only one at fault here, and now he's going back to prison where he belongs." That night, after the children were finally asleep, Grace in Ethan's room because she was too frightened to be alone, Marcus sat with Rebecca reviewing legal options. "Morrison violated the protective order," Rebecca said. "Combined with breaking and entering and attempted kidnapping, he's looking at significant prison time. And with the genetic evidence proving he's not Grace's biological father, any future custody claims are dead on arrival. I want him prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." "Done. But Marcus, there's something else we need to discuss." Rebecca pulled out a folder. "I've been investigating Sarah Morrison's past, trying to understand Grace's parentage. I found something." Marcus leaned forward. "What?" "Sarah Morrison worked at Donovan Pharmaceuticals 7 years ago. She was a research assistant in your Cambridge facility for approximately 4 months before she abruptly quit. No explanation given, no forwarding address." The words hit Marcus like physical blows. "Sarah worked for my company?" "Yes." "And Marcus?" Rebecca's expression was strange. "She quit exactly 2 weeks before Grace would have been conceived, based on the genetic timeline Dr. Chen established." Marcus felt the room spinning. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating facts. Sarah Morrison worked at your company. She left abruptly at precisely the time Grace would have been conceived. Grace's biological father is unknown. And now Grace has genetic markers that impossibly match your son's." As if what?" Marcus demanded. But his mind was already racing ahead, connecting dots he didn't want to connect. "As if God knew exactly which genetic combinations would create a child compatible with Ethan. As if divine providence reached back in time to orchestrate Grace's very conception." "Marcus, I know how crazy this sounds, but what if Grace exists specifically because God knew Ethan would need her 7 years later?" Marcus stood, pacing. "You're talking about predestination, about God manipulating people's lives, their choices. I'm talking about what the evidence shows. Grace's mother worked at your company, quit mysteriously, conceived a child whose father remains unknown, and that child grows up to be genetically matched to your son in ways that defy natural probability. Then she appears at precisely the right hospital, at precisely the right moment, to save Ethan's life through prayer." "Marcus, at what point do we stop calling it coincidence and start calling it divine design?" Marcus thought about Grace's words. God writes straight with crooked lines. Thought about Sarah Morrison, who died protecting a child that might have been conceived through circumstances Marcus would never understand. Thought about the impossibility of Grace's genetic match to Ethan. Thought about the miracle of that December night when a homeless child's prayer transformed biology itself. "So Grace exists because God needed her to save Ethan," Marcus said slowly. "Her mother's death, her homelessness, her suffering, all part of some grand divine plan. Or," Rebecca countered gently, "Grace exists because God loves both these children so much that he ensured they'd find each other and save each other. Not just Ethan's physical life, but your spiritual life, Marcus. Grace didn't just heal your son. She healed you. She brought faith back into this house. She reminded you what actually matters. Maybe that's the real miracle. Not the biology, but the transformation of a man who had everything, yet had nothing." Marcus sank into his chair, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to believe anymore. Believe what you've witnessed. Believe what Grace has taught you. Believe that sometimes the greatest miracles look like ordinary love until you realize there's nothing ordinary about them at all." Upstairs, Grace woke from a nightmare, crying out. Marcus was at her side in moments, holding her as she sobbed against his chest. "I dreamed he took me away," she whimpered. "I dreamed you couldn't stop him, and I was alone again. That will never happen," Marcus promised fiercely. "You're mine, Grace, legally, officially, and in every way that matters. Nobody will ever take you from this family. I swear it on my life." Daddy? Grace's voice was small, vulnerable. Do you think Mama knew? Before she died, do you think she knew I'd find you and Ethan? I think your Mama knew God had a plan for you, and I think she held on to that knowledge even when things were hardest. She kept you safe, Grace. She kept you hidden from Morrison, kept you fed and clothed as long as she could, taught you faith that would sustain you through the impossible. She did everything a mother could do to prepare you for this moment. I miss her so much. I know, and that's okay. But Grace, I think she'd be happy knowing you're here, safe and loved. I think she'd approve of me as your father. And I think, his voice cracked, I think she'd be proud of the extraordinary young lady you're becoming. Grace pulled back, studying his face in the dim light. Daddy, do you believe God planned all of this? Really believe it? Marcus thought about his answer carefully. 3 weeks ago, he would have dismissed such notions as superstition. But 3 weeks ago, he'd been a different man. I believe God loves you, Grace. I believe he moved heaven and earth to make sure you'd be safe and cherished. And I believe that sometimes miracles are less about breaking natural laws and more about revealing the supernatural love that's been there all along. Does that answer your question? Yes, Grace whispered. That's exactly what Mama used to say. She said miracles aren't God showing off. They're God showing up. She fell asleep in Marcus's arms, peaceful once more. And Marcus sat there in the darkness, holding this child who had crash-landed into his life and shattered his carefully constructed worldview in the most beautiful way possible. Tomorrow would bring adoption hearings and legal proceedings. Thomas Morrison would face justice for his crimes. Grace would officially become a Donovan. But tonight, Marcus simply held his daughter and marveled at a God who writes straight with crooked lines, who transforms suffering into blessing, who takes broken people and broken circumstances and weaves them into families held together by something far stronger than biology. He thought of Sarah Morrison, this woman he'd never known, who had somehow been connected to his company, who had conceived Grace under circumstances that remained mysterious. Had she known? Had she suspected that her daughter was somehow destined for this? Marcus would never know. But he knew this. Grace existed, impossibly matched to Ethan, precisely engineered by divine providence to save his son's life and transform his own. And that was miracle enough. The adoption hearing was scheduled for March 7th, exactly 3 months after Marcus first found Grace on the hospital steps. The courtroom was packed with witnesses. Dr. Chen and Dr. Reeves ready to testify about the genetic evidence. Mrs. Patterson prepared to speak about Grace's transformation. Even several board members from Donovan Pharmaceuticals present to support their CEO's unexpected journey into fatherhood. Judge Sarah Harrison presided, a woman in her 60s known for her no-nonsense approach to family law. She reviewed the extensive documentation, genetic reports, psychological evaluations, testimonies from Grace's school about her remarkable progress, evidence of Thomas Morrison's abuse and subsequent criminal charges. Miss Grace, the judge finally said, beckoning the child forward. I need to ask you some questions. Is that okay? Grace approached the bench, small but composed. Yes, ma'am. You've been through a lot in your young life. Your mother passed away, you experienced homelessness, and now you're living with Mr. Donovan and his son. How do you feel about all of this? I feel sad about Mama, Grace said honestly. I miss her every day, but I also feel happy, because I think she'd want me to be happy. And I'm happy with my new family. Daddy and Ethan make me feel safe and loved. Mrs. Patterson makes me cookies. I get to go to school and learn things. I get to sleep in a real bed every night and not be scared anymore. Mr. Donovan wants to adopt you, to make you legally his daughter. Do you understand what that means? It means I'm his forever, that nobody can take me away, that I'm a real Donovan, not just pretending. Grace's voice strengthened. It means I have a daddy who chose me, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. And that's even better than being born into a family, I think, because it means I was wanted. Judge Harrison smiled slightly. You're a very wise young lady. Do you want Mr. Donovan to adopt you? More than anything in the whole world, Grace said, tears beginning to flow. He saved me when nobody else even saw me. He gave me a home when I had nowhere to go. He made me believe I was worth something when I felt like trash on the street. And he loves me, really loves me, I can feel it. Thank you, Grace. You may return to your seat. The judge then called Dr. Chen to testify about the medical evidence. The courtroom listened in stunned silence as the doctor explained the impossible genetic match, the blood transformation during surgery, the biological connection that defied scientific explanation. Dr. Chen, the judge asked, In your professional medical opinion, is there any rational explanation for what occurred? No, Your Honor. I've consulted with geneticists, hematologists, and immunologists across the country. The consensus is that Grace and Ethan's genetic compatibility, combined with the documented blood transformation during surgery, falls outside the boundaries of current scientific understanding. If I may speak personally rather than professionally, please do. I believe we witnessed a miracle, Your Honor. I believe divine intervention created a connection between these children that medicine alone cannot explain. And I believe that connection means they're meant to be family, whether we understand the mechanism or not. Judge Harrison nodded slowly, then called Marcus to the stand. Mr. Donovan, you're a wealthy man with a demanding career. You've never been a single father before. Why do you want to adopt Grace? Marcus looked at Grace, sitting beside Ethan in the gallery, both children holding hands. Because from the moment I met her, she changed my life, not through her circumstances, but through her character. This 6-year-old child, who had every reason to be bitter and faithless, showed me more about love, grace, and genuine faith than I'd learned in 43 years of living. He turned back to the judge. Your Honor, I built a pharmaceutical empire. I made billions of dollars. I thought success meant quarterly earnings and stock prices and market dominance. Then my son nearly died, and a homeless little girl prayed for him with such pure faith that, his voice cracked, that God answered. Science can't explain it. I can't explain it. But it happened. Grace didn't just save Ethan's life that night. She saved mine too. She reminded me that people matter more than profits, that faith matters more than control, that love, real, sacrificial, transformative love, is the only thing that ultimately matters. How can I not want to be her father? She's already been my greatest teacher. Beautiful words, Mr. Donovan. But parenting isn't about philosophy. It's about daily commitment, sacrifice, and putting a child's needs above your own. Are you prepared for that reality? I am. I've already restructured my entire company to reflect what Grace taught me. 20% of profits now fund healthcare for families in need. I've established a children's shelter in Boston with full medical services. I've cut my own salary in half to fund homeless initiatives. But more than that, I've rearranged my priorities. Family first. Always. Grace and Ethan deserve a father who's present, engaged, and committed. That's who I'm determined to be. The judge reviewed her notes, then addressed the courtroom. This is one of the most unusual cases I've encountered in 25 years on the bench. We have genetic evidence that defies scientific explanation. We have documented transformation of blood type during surgery. We have a child who has demonstrated remarkable resilience and emotional health in Mr. Donovan's care. We have a biological father who is not biologically related and who has been charged with multiple felonies. She looked directly at Grace. Young lady, I believe your mother was right. God did have special plans for you. And I believe those plans led you exactly where you needed to be. Grace held her breath. Therefore, I am granting the petition for adoption. Grace Morrison will henceforth be known as Grace Morrison Donovan. Mr. Donovan, she is legally and officially your daughter. Congratulations to your family. The courtroom erupted in applause. Grace launched herself into Marcus's arms, sobbing with joy and relief. Ethan joined the embrace, and for several moments, the three of them held each other while witnesses dabbed at their eyes. Mrs. Patterson was crying openly. Dr. Chen and Dr. Reeves were smiling. Rebecca Walsh looked triumphant. Even Judge Harrison appeared moved by the scene. Daddy, Grace whispered through her tears, I'm really yours now, forever and ever, forever and ever. Marcus confirmed, you're a Donovan, Grace. You're my daughter. Nothing will ever change that. After the hearing, as they walked out of the courthouse into bright March sunshine, reporters swarmed them. The story had leaked. Billionaire CEO adopts homeless girl in miracle case, and media wanted details. Marcus shielded the children, but Grace surprised him by speaking up. I want to say something, she said quietly. Please. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. Grace stood on the courthouse steps, this tiny child in a new dress, and addressed the cameras with composure that belied her age. My name is Grace Morrison Donovan. 3 months ago, I was homeless and hungry and scared. My mama had died, and I thought I was all alone in the world. But I wasn't alone, because God was with me every single second, even when I couldn't see him. Her voice grew stronger. The day I met my daddy and my brother Ethan, I gave away my only food because a little boy was hungry. I didn't know that giving away half my bread would lead to getting a whole family. But that's how God works. When we give what we have, even when it's scary, He gives back more than we can imagine. Some people will say what happened to us was impossible. The doctors will tell you my DNA doesn't make sense. The scientists will say blood types can't change. But I'm standing here because God doesn't follow rules that people make. He makes his own miracles in his own way. And I want to tell everyone watching, especially kids who are scared or alone or who think nobody cares about them, God sees you. He knows exactly where you are and what you need. Sometimes his plans hurt before they heal. Sometimes you have to go through really hard things before you get to the beautiful things. But he never wastes your suffering. He's weaving it all together into something amazing, even when you can't see it yet. Grace looked up at Marcus. My daddy saved me from the streets. But really, I think God used me to save him too. That's what families do. They save each other. And now, I get to spend the rest of my life showing other people that miracles aren't just stories from the Bible. They're real. They're happening right now. You just have to have faith to see them. The reporters were silent, many visibly moved. Marcus scooped Grace into his arms. That was perfect, sweetheart. Your mama would be so proud. I think she is proud, Grace said softly. I think she's watching from heaven with Jesus and they're both smiling. That evening, the entire extended Donovan family gathered at the mansion for a celebration. Mrs. Patterson had prepared Grace's favorite meal, chicken soup with noodles and fresh bread, plus an enormous chocolate cake. Board members and their families attended. Doctors from the hospital came. Rebecca brought her family. But the moment Marcus treasured most came later, after the guests had left. He found Grace and Ethan in the library, looking at photo albums of their mother that Marcus hadn't opened in 2 years. That's Mom? Grace asked, studying a picture of a beautiful woman with Ethan's eyes. That's Mom, Ethan confirmed. She was really nice. She used to read to me every night and make up funny voices for all the characters. Do you think she would have liked me? Marcus sat down between them. She would have loved you, Grace. Absolutely loved you. She had the same kind of faith you do, the same generous heart. I think, he paused, emotion overwhelming him. I think she'd say God answered her last prayer. Before she died, she made me promise to make sure Ethan grew up knowing love and faith. I failed at that for 2 years. But then you came into our lives and taught both of us how to love and believe again. So yes, sweetheart, she would have loved you. And I think somehow she's part of why we found each other. Grace touched the photograph reverently. I'll never replace her. I don't want to replace her. But maybe I can help keep her memory alive by being the kind of person she was. You already are, Marcus said. You already are. That night, as he tucked Grace into bed, her own bed now, in the room that had been his wife's painting studio, now transformed into a little girl's sanctuary, Grace asked one more question. Daddy, do you think we'll ever know who my biological father was? Dr. Chen said they might be able to find him with more testing. Marcus considered his answer carefully. We might, and if you want to search for him when you're older, I'll support that. But Grace, I want you to understand something. Biology doesn't make a family. Love makes a family. Commitment makes a family. Being there day after day, through good times and hard times, choosing each other again and again, that's what makes a family. Like how God chooses us every day. Exactly like that. Your biological father gave you genetic material, but I choose to be your daddy every single day. And that choice, that commitment, that love, it's more real than any DNA test could ever prove. Grace smiled, peaceful and secure. I choose you too, Daddy. Every single day, I choose you. After she fell asleep, Marcus stood in the doorway, marveling at the path that had led them here. 3 months ago, he'd been a hollow man playing at success. Now he was a father to 2 extraordinary children, a changed man with a transformed purpose. His phone buzzed. An email from Dr. Chen with subject line, Final report, Grace's genetic origins. Marcus almost deleted it without reading. Did it matter? Did knowing the identity of Grace's biological father change anything about the family they'd become? But curiosity won. He opened the email. Mr. Donovan, after extensive genetic analysis and database comparisons, we've made a discovery that I felt you should know about privately before including it in the official medical record. Grace's genetic markers contain sequences we initially couldn't identify. However, further analysis revealed they're incredibly rare variants that appear in less than 0.01% of the global population. These variants are known to occur predominantly in families with history of extreme longevity, high intelligence, and unusual resistance to disease. More significantly, we found something unexpected. Grace shares mitochondrial DNA markers with your late wife's family lineage. Mitochondrial DNA is inherited maternally, which means Grace's biological mother must have been related somehow to your wife, Sarah Donovan, possibly a distant cousin or relative several generations removed. This doesn't change the adoption or Grace's legal status in any way, but it suggests that the connection between Grace and your family goes even deeper than we initially understood. She wasn't just a random child brought into your life by divine chance. On some level, she was always meant to be connected to your family tree. I've included detailed genetic reports if you want to explore this further. But Mr. Donovan, as a scientist and a person of faith, let me say this. Some mysteries are meant to remain mysteries. What matters is that Grace is home. The how and why may never be fully understood, and perhaps they're not meant to be. God writes straight with crooked lines indeed. Dr. Patricia Chen. Marcus sat in stunned silence, reading the email 3 times. Grace's mother had been distantly related to his late wife, which meant Grace had always carried a thread of connection to his family, even before they'd ever met. He thought about Sarah Morrison working at his company 7 years ago, thought about her abrupt departure at the exact time Grace would have been conceived, thought about the impossible series of coincidences that had led to this moment. Not coincidences, providence. A plan so intricate, so perfectly orchestrated across years and lives and circumstances, that only divine intelligence could have woven it together. Marcus walked to his late wife's painting studio, Grace's bedroom now, and looked at the sleeping child. In the moonlight streaming through the window, she looked angelic, peaceful, utterly secure. "Thank you," he whispered, unsure if he was speaking to his late wife, to Sarah Morrison, or to God himself. "Thank you for this child. Thank you for giving me a second chance at getting life right. Thank you for writing straight with crooked lines and turning my suffering and Grace's suffering into this beautiful, impossible family." Grace stirred slightly, murmuring in her sleep, "Love you, Daddy. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for choosing me back," Marcus whispered. "Thank you for teaching me that miracles aren't about breaking the rules. They're about revealing that love has always been the greatest force in the universe. And thank you for showing me that sometimes the most powerful act of faith is simply opening your heart, when God sends the impossible directly to your doorstep." He left Grace's door slightly ajar. She still preferred a nightlight and an open door, and walked down the hallway past Ethan's room, where his son slept peacefully, fully recovered from his surgery. 2 children, 2 miracles. One impossible family held together by something stronger than genetics or logic or understanding. Marcus stood at the window overlooking the city, Boston's lights twinkling like stars. Somewhere out there, other homeless children huddled in subway stations. Other families struggled with medical bills they couldn't pay. Other people suffered in ways the privileged never saw. But tomorrow, Marcus would continue his work, not just building a pharmaceutical empire, but using that empire to serve. The Grace Morrison Donovan Foundation would provide healthcare, shelter, and hope to thousands. His company would prioritize people over profits. His life would reflect what one small homeless girl had taught him, that success is measured not in dollars accumulated, but in lives transformed. The path had been crooked indeed, loss and grief and desperation, homelessness and fear and suffering, impossible medicine and unexplainable genetics and circumstances that defied rational explanation. But God had written straight through all of it, weaving Marcus and Grace and Ethan together into a family that proved miracles weren't just ancient stories, but living, breathing reality. A family built not on the foundation of biology, but on the unshakable bedrock of faith, hope, and love. And that, Marcus realized as he finally headed to bed himself, was the greatest miracle of all. The end.